Okay, looks like recording is going. So yeah, welcome everyone to the, I guess, what is the second client meeting. Isfan will, yes, you can go ahead and just jump in since you'll be kind of like leading the meeting. The one other thing that I had inserted is Alish, who's a community member, who's the former lead on all the SDK library stuff. He can only be on for a short period of time, so I kind of inserted at the top a topic for him just to talk about kind of a little dev effort that he's been interested in and brought up in previous days. So that's another topic that I inserted besides the blockchain one or Block Explorer one you guys did. So I guess Isfan, you can take it away.
So do you see my screen?
Yep, showing up on mine.
Yes. Moving around this thing. All right. So yeah, thanks for the intro. The agenda for tonight, we have a recap of action items, the command line interface, and the third point is Alish will be talking about that one, and then from there we will take it off to the base web wallet and so forth. So we are getting there anyways now. So let's get started. So Alish can leave earlier. So the first point, recap of call to action. I have copied the items of the last meeting, and basically, we said we will have weekly meetings for now, and I see many other special interest groups happening at the same time or in the same week. So that's why I have created this very simple calendar, and I hope this will keep the overview for everyone. So let me just show it to you shortly. So you can also join the meeting by just clicking on it, and I will extend it as time allows with more information. And yeah, basically this is just a short comment on this one. Then I haven't seen so much discussion in Slack in between meetings. So this is just a reminder for everyone to do so in the coming weeks, so we can derive agenda items for the next meeting. And we also have a news group or a mailing list, and you can join it by clicking on this link here. So far, there are only 3 members. But I put it in here and also added to the call to action at the end of the presentation, just as a reminder for you to join, because we will be disseminating important information through this.
Yeah, actually, I'll give one more quick point on the mailing list. Mm-hmm. So the use of a mailing list, I mean, obviously we set them up when we were kind of setting up the core kind of community, the latest iteration of it. And so traditionally, if you've been in or around open source communities and projects, especially larger projects like this one, would be kind of considered on the larger side when it matures, given the breadth of repositories and project efforts. You have kind of what you call synchronous and asynchronous kind of communication and announcements. So while things like Slack are great for, hey, in the moment, carrying on a conversation, we don't really consider tools like that to be not optimal for everyone. Not everyone wants to constantly be online, and then if they're offline for a while, try to go back and track conversations and manage threads and deal with all of that. The second thing is we don't really consider a system like Slack it should not be treated as a system of record. It's a system for facilitating conversation. So the systems of record we view are primarily GitHub and the files and the documents. Any outside linked documents like this presentation and the meeting notes docs that are kind of linked in and shared everywhere, recordings and videos. And then to that point, the mailing lists are like a persistent set of information that lives forever. And then the other nice aspect of it is this synchronous aspect where, conversations can be going on and you don't have to have Slack. You don't have a Slack client. You just, check your email and can manage a folder for it. So it's, we'll be using it for announcements. We'll announce stuff on Slack just like we have been. So there will be a level of redundancy, but we will try to start kind of doing core announcements. And even if it's duplicative and conversations on there, that might span longer periods of time. So just kind of a heads up. Again, not much volume there yet, but the goal is to increase it as more people participate.
Good. So I think we can move on to the next slide. The second point is about the NEM2 command line interface. By the way, this visual enhancement is by 44 UK, and this also brings me, he opened a pull request, and this also brings me to the first point, what needs to be done for an updated CLI. Well, of course, the SDK is being updated right now, but we also need to establish a governance structure of who is allowed to approve PRs, because there are some PRs waiting there for some time, and many more PRs will come to make it compatible with COW.
I would agree there. Same problems are with the SDKs. The CLI is going to be dependent of the SDK as well. So all this review stuff, it should be a little more defined who can review and who will actually merge the PRs, I guess. Totally agree.
So I have put in here as comment that Steven, who is also here in this call, he could be working on the CLI after finishing some tasks with the SDK as well, and well, he could be a candidate for committers. But of course, there should be some kind of control person, the one who opens PRs and another one checking them, reviewing. So yeah, this is a topic we should discuss and use this call now to find a solution.
Yeah, so it's pretty easy on how the flow will go. So pretty much, I guess it's like, any of the quote unquote, anyone who already has commit access to the repos, yourself as kind of like, current chair for the group. David's been helping out there as well. Obviously his core focus is like heading up the doc effort, but obviously he's been helping on testing and whatnot. And in my mind, that's pretty much like where things are seeded and where it starts from. Then PRs happen in reviewing. And then as it makes sense, whether it's not really about a certain number of contributions, but once things seem to be flowing and there's a certain level of, comfortability on everyone's side, people will get commit access. So a good example is what we did actually with, I think 44 UK as well, was he contributed to the documentation several times over a long period of time. And when we just introduced this new structure and setup, David brought up the same thing of like, hey, he's been doing a good job and he continues to contribute. We should make him a committer. So that's what we did, I don't know, maybe a couple of weeks ago or something. So so that's kind of how the process goes. So like, we just kind of work through normal PRs. And so if Steven's the one that's going to be heading it up, he can just submit PRs. And then whether it's 1 commit, 8 commits, like there's no hard rule. It's just like, hey, the flow seems to be going good. This person can be trusted. They're going to be around for a certain period of time. They're committed to the project. Okay, let's give them commit access so that they can kind of like, it's a form of delegation and earned trust, basically. That's how all this stuff works with open source land.
Good. So I've put in here 2 points. The first one, the governance. The second can happen in parallel, namely opening up in the coming days more issues to define broken or even new features that come with COW. I've seen David already did some issues. So we will see this kind of movement in the coming days. And then hopefully after the SDK is up to a certain level, and there has been a lot of progress in the past days. Also big thanks to Greg or Evias. We will see also movement on the code level for the CLI.
Regarding the SDK, I didn't see a point in the slides regarding that, but I guess there's a meeting tomorrow evening as well, and I'm going to be part of it because regarding the SDK, there is quite some discussion to have. And
yeah, that's tomorrow though. Tomorrow's the API meeting. So the API group covers obviously the APIs, but really anything that's API, cat buffers, data format, the protocol level, the SDKs, everything's under that umbrella. The client group for today the easiest way to kind of generically describe the client group are things that are kind of user/developer interface focus. So you can think of the CLI tool as like a user interface on top of the SDK, just much like a wallet. Granted, the CLI is a little bit, let's say, closer to the metal and in text form versus UI form. But so tomorrow we'll have a specific agenda item for you giving an update. I believe Shintat will be giving an update on the Java SDK side. And we'll cover a couple other things in regards to some topics that were covered yesterday on the testing. We did the testing group meeting yesterday. And there's some, let's not call them standards, but anyways, that stuff will be covered tomorrow.
I would not say I would say GraphQL falls more under API/SDK, but more up in the chat, in the group chat, if anyone's wondering. Okay, so for the command line interface, I would say the topic is closed, and I will hand over to Alej.
Hi. Well, expected. Yeah.
I mean, I can also introduce the project if you.
Well, I just can like share some of my needs as a developer. So using Adaptable. Basically, I found that the lack of a good or fast wallet.
Sorry, can we just advance the slide and go to the topic? At least maybe it's frozen on my end. It's still showing the CLI screen.
What is it showing for the others?
It's still showing the CLI screen on mine. So yeah.
Okay, maybe I will. It says your screen sharing is paused. How is that possible? Okay, I will just restart the sharing. Okay.
Perfect. All right. Sorry, Alej, go ahead.
Cool. So, yeah, originally, don't worry, it's just me there. Well, the thing is, requiring a developer or a Catapult wallet to develop stuff that I need more user interaction. So my lack of, the user that they have now requires a UI or a wallet. And because I am developing a web application using Catapult, my kind of users that are willing to use my new web app requires this kind of integrated wallet in the browser. So that's the way I found that more of the users find the product usable. So the CW, it's like Catapult wallet extension for Firefox. So it's not like something that would be super nicey and fancy. It's more like, hey, this somehow helps the users. And if someone like really finds it useful, then maybe more people can contribute too. I don't try to make this a super well-structured project. It's more like, hey, I do this like in a rough way, similar to Planet Yuki that they found this wallet, but in a browser mode. So my idea is just to test that I can integrate my one web application that uses Catapult with a browser, and then I can link and like share and say, hey, I want to announce this transaction, and then the wallet can listen to this announcement and say, okay, I sing it for you, and then I solve. So I have this separation of responsibilities between my web application that I don't want to deal with private keys or anything, and then delegating this security stuff to the wallet, the Firefox extension wallet, but the wallet won't be secure enough. So it's like just a testing if it is way to interact with the web applications are useful or not. So it's not more a proof of concept and say, hey, maybe this way interact between web applications using Catapult and the browser makes sense for the users. So that's more in this direction. So nothing like super like fix, nothing like super like, hey, this is gonna work. It's more like a test, and then we find out if it works or not. So it's super like open to everyone. So if someone was to come here and then do pull requests, I am more like super, let's say, optimistic pull request acceptance. It's not something that they will say, maybe you should to change this or change something else. I am more like, hey, you did something that maybe works somehow well, are you gonna accept the pull request? So people can just throw new features there. Will not take too much care about which kind of feature. If it brings value for the user, it will go inside. So not something too much rule-based pull request acceptance. So yeah, that's my brief introduction to this extension for Firefox.
I have a question for you, Alice. You're using a URI scheme, and I'm super excited about seeing a URI scheme in action. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how you chose your UI scheme and what it is.
Basically, well, I found a limitation to use the URI scheme as it is today because of Firefox limitation. But it's super easy to fix, just adding a web plus the current schema, so easy to bypass the issue. So my main idea is to test if I can somehow go to the web page and say, put a link which have the schema, and then say, hey, I want to announce this. And then the wallet pop up say, hey, you're about to announce this, unlock the wallet. And then, are you sure you want to send this? And then goes to the Catapult network. So what will somehow happens is you have a web page. Let's imagine like it, which is like Twitter, and then you say, hey, I want to add this tweet. I click tweet, and what does tweet is open your wallet, and then you send the transaction in your wallet, and everything like recipient, address, message is already filled for you, and you just have to say, hey, announce. So the good thing is that you verify the things that you're going to send, so no one tries to say, hey, yeah, just send a simple message and then you add more Zen, for example. So you have this double checking with your wallet. So you're always in power of what you are singing for. So yeah, that's how I think it could be the first iteration. But if you have more ideas of a better way to do it, I am open to new suggestions.
Sounds good. Thank you.
So we can compare this to MetaMask.
Probably not. MetaMask have more contributions and more time in the market.
Mm-hmm.
So some way, yeah.
So from the scope, alpha version of MetaMask, or
well,
basic, yeah. Or what would be the difference? Just for a conceptual, comparing it, or
you can compare with MetaMask if you like. I didn't use MetaMask a lot, but seems like similar. So, yeah.
Have you seen you chose Firefox? I think for Chromium-based browsers, or for Chrome, there was also from Nem1 from Ferran, as far as I know. Ferran was also building something like this, right? Or no, it was a bit different. It was like a wallet. It was not.
It was micro wallet, I think.
Yeah, no. Now it comes to my mind. It was a bit different, different scope.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a good approach to start a new thing if there is already things in the market. So that I found that I can adapt some stuff already in the market and then put this integration. So my main focus is in the integration, not in how the things behave like inside. So if I can take advantage of already current projects, I will do it. So, and also if the people can contribute to as well, better. So yeah, I have this in mind, like this micro wallet, and then this, for example, Yuki View web-based wallet as well. So this already some solutions, but I find that my main goal is to make this integration. Like what we're lacking now is how we can, with one click, integrate and call a wallet to do something for you. So that's where the users that get lost more often. Like, okay, I'm using a web application. Now I have to open a wallet. I have to copy paste this. So that's where the user get lost, at least in my side. So that's why I'm trying to solve. The others, I will try to reuse what the other people already done. Yep.
So using this platform to advertise and to say, to tell the developers, please join. But if I might also, I see it's quite an early project, but do you already see obstacles that we should discuss here? Obviously, the URI schema, developing it further is one thing, but do you see anything else where we could help in this governance?
To be honest, I am super open in contributions. It's not something like I will. If someone wants to come here, it's like, hey, I want to do the page of transfer transaction, I will just accept the pull request. Just like, okay, works, okay, in. So my main focus is on more in integration that they will be, and it's not like I try to governance this project. To me, is like pull requests without adding too much bureaucracy in the process, because as I shared, this is not like a strong project or super stable project, so it's more like a playground to find how the users could go, and if this becomes like really useful, then we can have this more structured conversation. But up to today, it's more like, hey, do you want just to do a little web page which is 100 lines long? Okay, you can do it. I will accept it without any question.
What I meant was the schema is very important for this one, the URI schema. I mean, with Catapult and let's say aggregated transactions and inner transactions, it will get quite long. So that's why I think in the NEM improvement proposal, there is the part where the idea is to pass the serialized information around. So on this wallet side, there also needs to be something that to deserialize and to show to the user. So I'm just wondering if that is holding back, or is this a proof of concept and building your own URI schema, or how?
I try to adapt to the URI schema, which is in the proposal. So if I find something that is like impeding me to go forward, then I will like report there, hey, Firefox have this limitation. Please, can you adapt and just add X, Y, Z? So it's a way to reinforce retroaliments, I how to say it, feedback loop, So as a first implementer, I'm gonna say, hey, I have this like 6 points that doesn't allow me to go forward. So hey, please consider change this by X, Y, Z.
Okay, cool. So from my part, I don't have any more questions. I will advertise it in the community to join forces.
If this helps, I can just move the repository to somewhere else. So if it helps people to be more open, so don't worry. If it have to be moved to somewhere else, I just have no objection.
Cool, thank you. Anyone else questions to this point? Okay, nobody's maybe also writing in the chat.
Oh, no, nobody's happy. Nobody is sharing something.
Yeah, I think what Alice is trying to do is first get it working and then see what's the quality of it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like first should be, hey, it is useful for a user. Yes, then we get the quality, but not the other way around.
Yeah. Okay.
So let's get swing. You got things rolling, and yeah, great to see it. Thank you. So I've heard that you would like to leave earlier because it's quite late in our time zone. So no, there's no offense if you are leaving earlier. Just wanted to point out to the others. Okay, good. So I would move on. Is there anything else? Did I just interrupt someone?
No, I just want to say that I'm happy to see this kind of projects outside of the happening in the community.
Yeah, definitely, I agree. Okay, so the fourth point, base web wallet, part 2. This is a slide that I have added recently. like an hour before the start. Basically, a short recap on the left side of what we have discussed in the last session. It is the base web wallet that you can also find the description on GitHub. And in this special interest group, we have basically defined two user groups, end users and strictly developers. So you can read more about this in the notes. And the main quality of this is that it is modular and plugin approach based and supports a set of high-level features. And the initial high-level features are described in the GitHub page. Now, I think there is also a need for a different kind of web wallet. So I call it for now prototyping web wallet. And so far we have coined it or named it developer community efforts. So I'm thinking about, so let me just click this away, any wallet. And so, and the other one where you just visit the website and you have this rough usage of the features. And I think there's a big need for that. So that's why I wanted to bring up this topic as well, because we haven't touched on this in the last meeting last week. So I would also like to start this sub project or coin this term because we gotta put also focus on this one, I think. And basically, instead of having a set of high-level features, this one should be supporting all SDK features. It is for developers, but also for new developers who are just being onboarded. So also having this educational purpose quality. Now, I don't have the... So do you know of which wallet I'm talking about? So let me just... So this is Planet Hookie's website, and it's also here in this call. And I'm talking about this kind of wallets. So this question is also directed to you, Nate, namely, what do you think about splitting up this web wallet effort into these two things?
Yes, my first, I mean, I think about it more, but my first feeling is no. I would say what I can picture is what you refer to as prototyping web wallet actually is the base web wallet until it gets mature enough to where we think that the plugin framework approach is solid, right? We know, just like all software development, even with the best intention, with the longest design period, once you start implementing, there'll be some revs and cleanup, right? Like we're going through that right now on the SDKs and the REST server and whatnot. So what I would picture is the first version of what we start for the base wallet is mentally conceived to be the prototype. And then once it matures, I don't see any reason why they should be standalone, why the one that supports all the features isn't really just a specific build of all the features, right? So whereas there might be a fork in a repo that has a different config file that when you do a build and load it, it has the kitchen sink. Whereas the default one, if you use the default build, is like super stripped down. But trying to, I wouldn't even say trying, but like maintaining two different ones over a long period of time. If we're targeting an extensible approach, I don't see any reason why one of those extensible approaches can't be, this is the kitchen sink developer build. Now that, again, that build config or whatever, however it manifests, like we don't know how that's going to manifest yet. So let's say the manifest of a build is a JSON file with a bunch of definitions and configs in there about which modules to load and where the entry point is for the file, and maybe a custom Webpack file or something like that. And then you do a build, and then it spits out a single build or whatever, right? I could see starting out with this kind of prototyping mindset, and then I think if it matures to the level of, hey, the plugin framework is good, it's mature, it might evolve over time, but it seems pretty stable, then it would be like, hey, let's start porting these features over into plugin style, if that kind of makes sense. Knowing that the plugins themselves are probably going to be living in different repositories potentially, right? Like you can picture where various plugins will be maybe all in their own repositories. And then when you do a build, those things are just NPM modules themselves that get loaded via dependencies, right? If we're talking about Webland and Node and stuff. So that's my initial kind of thoughts and feelings.
Well, obviously it is a design process, and there is going back and forth. It is like a circle. But now, if we go, I mean, strictly speaking, so this is also the first thing that comes to my mind in this discussion. If we, strictly speaking, going the path of this prototyping wallet, where there's no discussion happening of what, let's say, technology stack or this user interface, what technology to use for or framework for the user interface. That was also a discussion point in the very first meeting, that some thought should be put to that as well, because we could go in one direction quickly, I don't know, to React or React Native or these kind of things. So what do you think about that? Is this part of the design process? Let's just go with one and we'll see how it develops, and then at one point we decide, okay, now we have to think about the design, about the user interface framework, or how do we approach this best as a group?
Yeah, I mean that would be my mindset. We start with an effort. We mentally conceive it to be, looking at your boxes on the screen, we mentally conceive the initial effort to be the prototyping version of it, with the goal that it's going to evolve. Now, there's a couple ways, of course, just like every software project. It could evolve in that we actually evolve in the repo on different branches and merge back, and it emerges from the cocoon as a butterfly, right? Or it could be, well, this repo and this prototyping effort has served us well, but it's kind of messy, and it was better if we just start a fresh repo, rip out the core pieces, package them up, and then move forward, right? And either one of those doesn't really matter, right? It's going to kind of organically go however it goes, just like a lot of software projects. But just kind of, again, mental mindset wise, we're kind of starting in prototyping web wallet land, trying to move as quick as possible without being too hasty or making decisions. We shouldn't make decisions hastily, and then we shouldn't take too much time either. We shouldn't waste time being like, oh, we can design this for the next month and then we can start development. It's like, well, there's enough examples out there that we can start to read into and research from. And so we can kind of, even in the prototyping one, we can kind of start to, on feature branches and stuff, right? Like suss out certain types of plugin approaches based on how other projects have done it in the same kind of manner. And we might iterate a couple times on those. So like, again, mentally kind of start in prototyping land, see how it evolves, and whether it's the same repo or that one gets deprecated and we create a new one, we'll figure out. But and then again, as we're developing these things, eventually in the beginning they're not plugins. It's just like one UI screen. And then the hope would be, at least on the UI level, that we would make sooner than later. We would decide like, okay, we're going forward with XYZ, whether that's React or other, right? If we have to make a change in that, like for instance, it might just make sense. Like, well, in these prototyping ones, like we're only for instance, Planet Hookie's wallet, it's like a big web page, right? So like, who cares about a web framework? Like, we're wasting time by like even coding that up in React if we were going to pick that. Like, just get some static files and templates, and start getting the iterations on the underlying level, because that's what's going to be more important, right? That's going to take more time. I'm not saying we have to do that, but again, kind of move fast, iterate with intent, and then hope that the prototyping effort relatively efficiently blossoms into the base web wallet, and then we kind of just organically take it from there. Again, that's my first kind of mindset, and hope that the group would kind of coalesce around.
Good. Do we have any other input from the other participants here? Any other thoughts, comments?
I'd say, since we're on the subject, as we're deciding, I mean, as the conversation is revolving around frameworks, the other point I'll kind of bring up is, If we go with React, I would highly advocate for going with hooks. I don't know if anyone uses React or has been following what's been going on there, but
Wait, React is, sorry, mate.
yeah,
Go on.
and so yeah. So like, as we continue to evolve on the topic, if we go in the React direction, I would say from day 0, day 1, we go with the hook design pattern as it's been officially productionized in the latest releases, and the prescribed pattern going forward. So instead of going previous, right?
The hook.
Yeah, it's referred to as hooks. So essentially what they did, for those that aren't familiar, without going into the weeds, React is, I mean, all frameworks are opinionated, obviously, but React has a certain kind of object interface and flow of execution. And sometimes it requires, depending on what you're doing, some boilerplate. And the way you extend it is a lot of wrapper code sometimes. And so they just basically buried a lot of stuff under the covers and then created this hook interface to essentially, it's a way to clean things up, make it easier to extend, and then essentially greatly to partially minimize how much code you have to write to create more complex things. So it's just referred to as the React like hook interface, I think, or is the official way. So they just introduced these hooks. You don't have to write big classes anymore. It's all function based. And so anyway, it's the way they basically say, hey, if you already have a React app, do not rewrite your React app.
Mm-hmm.
Write greenfield stuff in hooks. And if you're fixing bugs or updating your components of old applications, go ahead and rewrite them because it's backwards compatible. So again, they basically kind of recommend, if you're starting a new project, we pretty much say you should be looking at the hook interface. So I thought I'd just bring that up. I think it GA'd 2 weeks ago, I think, or 3 weeks ago. It's been in beta for like 4 months or 3 months or something. But anyways, just another point as everyone's kind of discussing and thinking and researching.
Do you want to share your favorite articles or some good reads on this?
Yeah, I mean, we can share. I mean, the main one is, I mean, if you do a search, you're going to get 1 million hits because it's been a hot topic for about 6 months or so since the last major conference, even before that. But they just posted the official blog post with the 16.8 release, I think. So we can share actually in the notes. Actually, just add a little note here as you're collecting the notes. Grab React hooked web links or whatever, right? So we can. I haven't read it, but I saw the post. One of the leads is in one of my Twitter feeds. So like, I saw that he, again, this was a few weeks ago, posted like, hey, 16.8's out. And I know 16.8 was supposed to be the one that they introduced it in. So I assume it's there. So we can link to that post and maybe a couple examples.
There's also, I know for Dev2, which is like an online community for developers, they had a post about React hooks fairly recently, and it's pretty good.
Yeah,
so
it's pretty,
I can also link.
Yeah. So if you get that, just throw it in. So all these docs are all public editable. So when we when we have the notes open, if you guys, anyone has comments or questions or whatever, obviously you can throw it into the chat if we're in the moment. But after the fact, all the meeting notes are just public read write. So like if you find a link and you want to add content, just go ahead and throw it in. I saw someone just posted it in the chat, so we can do it there. But for future reference, yeah, it's pretty. I mean, I haven't been coding in React for a little while because I just haven't been coding as much. Been more kind of management level than hands-on in the weeds. But what I've seen from the people that were in my previous feeds. A lot of people are kind of trying to quickly move towards hooks and in such are doing probably, like blog posts and stuff like, hey, here's where my components in the old style, here's my components in the new style, and here's was the experience. So again, I've seen little highlights over the past few months pop up in my feed. I just haven't consumed too much of it yet.
I think Stephen also wanted to say something in the beginning.
Oh yeah. Just wondering. Just talking about the web UI frameworks. Have you guys thinking about using Ionic?
To date,
Basically,
to date, no. I mean, so the first three ones that kind of popped up based on a first round of input from before, and then we kind of covered it at a high level.
right. Sorry, yeah.
We're React, Vue, and Angular based on some people's previous just dev experience. So we can add that one to the list as well.
Just as sorry, I missed the first one, but I'm just thinking because Ionic, once you build web applications, it's automatically build the mobile app as well. So it might be handy for just for mobile apps as well.
The nice thing about React is it basically doesn't have a back end, at least React Native, since they switched to it. Like it used to be specified for a browser backend, but people use React for everything nowadays as well. And it's extremely popular. And it's very easy to use.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say so actually maybe Ismail make a note saying, Ionic reference. So I mean, like this is definitely what these meetings are kind of about, bringing up kind of input. Again, a lot of this, we want kind of general consensus, but it will be somewhat of I wouldn't say a dictatorship, but some of it will come down to the people that end up being tasked with kind of their job to actually start to build this. And it's not going to be one person, it's going to be multiple. So their input's going to get kind of weighted up. And then we want everyone else to kind of like give input, right? There's pluses and minuses to all of them, lightweight versus heavyweight. To your, I don't know who that was, it was just speaking, but I've used a lot of React since it was created. I've done a little bit of Angular. I am familiar with Vue, but I've never created a project in it. They all have pluses and minuses. And there is this plus when you start talking about, desktop mobile. There's also someone brought up Flutter as well, which Google obviously open sourced after they acquired them and stuff. So there's several things that can kind of benefit from both just web component side as well as, mobile native, pseudo native. So yeah, we'll add that to the list.
Sure. Okay, so if there is no input, I would like to move on to the next point. Point 5, Super Explorer Framework. And I will be handing over to Jeff because Jeff will introduce you to this project.
All right, thank you. So I've started with some of my team here in the US working on a Super Explorer framework. And the kind of color is themed and matched to the mobile app that I designed. It's fun. Can I share my screen?
Sure. Yeah.
If so, okay.
No problem.
I'm going to share over here. Okay. Okay, so you guys can see my screen, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
So the basic idea is that in the past we had NIM China that looked like this. We had a Node Explorer that looks like this. We have NIM Tools that looks like this. And we have NIM Nodes that looks like this. They're all great websites. And then there's Nimbex. They're all great websites, but they were all kind of done independently and differently. So what I thought to kind of kick things off was to try to make a framework that anybody could use and build and fork and change. And so the first tab here is nodes. This is a network explorer to start off. And then there's another tab here for network stats. And then there's another tab here for maps that doesn't work right now. And then eventually there'll be another tab here and another tab. And the idea is that these tabs can be easily interchangeable with one another, and that as time goes on, I'll get a whole bunch of tabs built. Of course, I'll add blocks and transactions and, whatever. But new projects that come along, let's say, for instance, Proxima X, they need a block explorer, then they could just take this and then add a new tab for documents or for voting or for whatever it is that they're doing, or any other project on NIM, basically. So right now I've asked for it to be built in React because there were some people talking about that last week. And I'm trying to use the NIM2 SDK, JavaScript and TypeScript, but a few of the things are using the core APIs. So I'm going to try to move away from that. And yeah, I think that's a little bit of an introduction. I'm having a technical difficulty. I don't know how to unshare my screen because there's a problem here. So I'm going to leave the meeting really quickly and then come back, and then somebody else can go on.
If you actually real quick, if you mouse up to the very, very top of the screen.
I know I can't. It's not working. That bar is just not there on my browser. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Here, like here's what.
Wait. It's on the other side.
Okay. Yeah, maybe the dock. Sometimes it'll, depending on what you do.
Yeah. Start video, resume, stop share. Okay, so now I've stopped sharing then, so we're all good. It's fine if you want to go ahead and share your screen again. But that's kind of the basic idea, and so I'm looking for feedback. What I just showed you right now is a demo. There hasn't been a lot of coding done on it, so I could still change it some as time goes by. Open that up for any comments or thoughts.
Yeah, so I'd say, this is Nate again. So cool. This is, I think we had talked previously, definitely taking a modular approach, kind of like the wallets. In theory, let's not commit to it now, but in theory, there's no real reason why wallet stuff couldn't become, quote unquote modular plugins within this stuff as well. In reality,
if
there's really no reason.
Yeah.
If we're just talking about generic, you were using the analogy of tabs are the plugins, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you think of it as just kind of like menu items, navigation, we shouldn't waste any energy on that right now, but just have it in the mental, back of our heads. Since you say, you're kind of talking to the guys about using React, I'll just reemphasize, make sure they look at hooks. That's kind of becoming the prescribed stuff going forward, at least from the core React guys. I would say, obviously, some of it depends on the framework. But nowadays, more of a nitpicky thing. For navigation, if you can use, depending on if they're going to use React and depending on what library they use for browser navigation, instead of the hash bang at the end, you kind of use full relative path. Again, super in the weeds stuff, but stuff that just popped out as you were clicking around. But yeah, the rest of everything sounds good. So yeah, definitely it was cool that, timing wise worked out to where we brought up. So what we can do, and whether it's next week or the week after in the next meeting, if it warrants it and it seems to make sense, we can throw another agenda item for any updates on this. Or there's also, I can't tell for sure, but let's say there's, besides this effort, there is at least 1 to N other efforts, just like Wallet, in the community of people that want to do Block Explorer. So just like with wallets, the hope, it's not a requirement, but the hope is that people can coalesce around a single base and kind of power and numbers type thing. So that's another thing we'll be communicating is, if you're going to be working on anything Explorer related or wallet related, either go your own in your own bubble. Else, it'd be great if you could participate and build, modules or whatever, right? Then the other thing I'll just add is, again, too in the weeds at this point, if you guys are just starting to get into thinking about this, but think about it in terms of, and again, you'd have to do a little bit of research, but reference projects and design patterns that can be borrowed. You can look at it as tabs as being the quote unquote kind of plugin at a top level, but then also maybe just kind of panels or whatever term you want to use within a tab, right? So for instance, let's just take a stupid example of a dashboard tab, which has maps and graphs and charts. Well, Sally's a developer and she wrote some new visualization and she doesn't want to put that on a new tab. she just wants to go to the dashboard tab or whatever and add it as a new chart. So again, it's kind of like as you peel back more layers on things that could be pluggable. Again, a lot of these things can be metadata driven at some config level when you build your app or something. But anyways, just food for thought.
Yeah, it sounds great. I'm going to pass on all those notes, definitely.
What didn't come across, because of course Jeff showed me this earlier last week, the notion about Node Explorer and Block Explorer.
Okay, so yeah, basically I'm trying to build a general framework, and as soon as I have the basic tabs done on this Node Explorer, then the idea is to do some basic tabs for a Block Explorer, and then have the two different ones be different. So we have a Network Explorer, and then we have a Block Explorer, and the framework of them are the same. The color scheme, the fonts, everything like that's the same, but the actual tabs or panels, as we're calling them, or plugins, have completely different content. So like a Network Explorer could have things like nodes, and could have things like network statistics, could have things like a map, could have things like super node data, or maybe a harvesting panel, like, because this is very important, you know, like NemTools has here's what you need to know about harvesting and how you harvest or whatever. Those are kind of network things. And then the Block Explorers, they typically get into transaction history, all about accounts. So we could make a rich list tab, we could make a harvester tab, we could make one for searching mosaics or searching namespaces or searching metadata or aliases or accounts. If we have voting, we could do a voting tab and a voting poll tab. And it just goes on and on and on. And as there's more projects that are coming in and building off of Catapult, I would expect that they would want their own specialized tab, but basically we already have the core things. And maybe some project doesn't want a Network Explorer and a Block Explorer, they just want one. So they take nodes, and they take blocks, and they take transactions, and then they build one more thing. And so it's like they just have a single simple Explorer, but the point is that with this framework, they'll be able to mix and match as they want and have one or two, or even if they want, you could go up to 3, because we could have one that's like NemTools that just focuses on accounts and tools. I mean, eventually, or a whole Supernode Explorer like we have right now, one that's just dedicated to supernodes. I think the idea is that it's these tabs, anybody in the community, this should be open source so they can add their own and fork it and mix and match them to make their own Explorer if they want, or add and make a pull request to get it added or improve. You know, so that's kind of the idea. Instead of just building one and then building another one, I'm trying to build a general framework that could turn into many. Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, thank you. Good. So, any other comments from the participants here? Then I will leave it. Then I will leave it like this. The next point, open discussion. So I already put in one point, discussion point, namely this UI library decision-making framework template. So that's also why I put in here the note for adding Ionic there, because I believe that we will reach at one point a state where we will have a set of requirements and then compare the different technologies and see how it matches or fulfills those requirements, and having some kind of point system, averaging them out and showing how we reach to that conclusion. And basically I just wanted to bring up this point of I could create such a template, a really basic one, a really simple one. Maybe someone of you has one already or has used one. So I'm open for suggestions as well. So if there are volunteers saying they want to show their template, then fine. Otherwise, I will make an agenda item for the next meeting out of this.
Yeah, so go ahead and create an agenda item for it, and we can either create one, or there might be one. Right?
I get it started. It started and present it at the next meeting and see if it's suitable for our needs.
I'm interested in hearing what everybody thinks about languages. I know that Alice just said he was working in Vue. Planet is here in the chat, and he's working with Vue. My LuxTag developers work with Vue. They seem to really love it. And then there's a lot of people that really love React, React Native, or different things.
I want to step in a little bit about that, because in our backend SDK and library, we have the reactive approach, but I would also like to see such comparison about Vue and whatever else. There are so many frameworks to compare.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what this conversation is about, right? So we started it in the last meeting. We're not going to solve it today or probably even next week.
Right.
And so, yeah, it is just taking notes of input. Again, things that get weighted up. If Sally, the developer, is the one that's going to be the lead on something, and she's like, I really, really want to use React, then it's like, okay, that obviously carries a certain amount of weight. And so we can do pluses and minuses. Again, there's things from, I would say, any framework you can throw it at a dartboard, you're going to hit a bullseye with adoption, right? There's a ton of people using React, a ton of people using Angular, a lot of people using Vue, Ionic, a lot, but definitely less than the previous three. Flutter, less, but Flutter's become very popular for a React Native competitor, and it's under Google. Google acquired them, so it's basically, let's say it has a lot of ammo behind it, right, with Google backing it and pushing it, right, as an open source framework. But it's Flutter's more of a React Native competitor than like a React competitor, to look at it from that view. So yeah, I mean, I'd say, like, to Istvan's point, we can create a little kind of like template that's like pluses and minuses, lightweight versus whatever, widely used. They're all going to have a checkbox in that, like, oh, they're all widely used. They all have good to great documentation and big communities that you can go ask questions on. So yeah, let's continue this conversation and get as much, to Istvan's point at the beginning of the meeting, people are bored, bring it up on the Slack channel. Hey, has anyone done any more thinking or researching? Anyone have any links to share, right? And the conversation can kind of happen organically there, and people hop off into the doc and leave some notes or something, right? And then we'll just revisit it, whether it's next week or the week after, whatever makes sense in the next group meeting.
Anyone else with a discussion item?
You mentioned this is more so, this isn't this is sort of from the client perspective, but not really. You mentioned the possible, like, for example, the CLI, that it would basically be a text input format, and also the possibility of GraphQL. I'm just wondering if there's going to be, I know that, for example, for the TypeScript SDK, there's a data transfer object. I'm just wondering if there would be any form of support for like some sort of data transfer object, because I'm planning on developing an SDK in Python. And so obviously if there is some sort of like structured format, obviously I would want to support that in that form of like inside an SDK.
Yeah, that's so I'll just kind of address it quickly here. That's really a discussion for tomorrow, because APIs. So just quickly addressing it. Your questions are perfect, spot on. So basically, what's going on right now is there is what we refer to as the cat buffer library, which are kind of, goes from like the protocol data storage format into, each language's generated code. So if you're familiar with Thrift or protobufs or stuff like that, it's a catapult version of it, right? And that kind of gives the baseline. So things we're doing at the currently, the best way to think of it is the JavaScript TypeScript SDK is kind of the leading supported one, even though we're kind of still at that point. And so what we've been kind of telling people, and again, we'll have there's a couple of the guys have jumped into it was way out of date, but they've been jumping into the Java one. They'll kind of talk to their experience on this. So things you're asking, that's what they're literally going through like in the moment right now. And so what we're kind of telling people is, like, I don't know, are you the one that was asking the questions on the Slack about the Python SDK designs and some stuff? Or maybe on the React one?
I'm Alex.
Okay, yeah, so perfect.
Yeah.
So basically this is exactly what we want to have happen, right? So more of it will happen tomorrow. So if you can hop on, great, hop on, and like we'll actually put an item.
Okay. I'll just ask the question tomorrow.
Because these are things where we're kind of telling people, not just for SDKs, but for testing and even like the wallet stuff in these conversations, we're like, we want to move forward, but we also kind of want people to kind of hold back because we don't want people like rushing forward, building something. We're like, oh, by the way, this is what we learned in this other thing, and here's this other version's ready. So please do it like this. And then it's like, shit, even if it's a wasted day and it's not like a wasted person month, right? It's still annoying. And if we can kind of, again, a lot of things are hardening right now. So we're on the cow release. We're moving towards the Dragon release. The Dragon release is a heavy moving parts under the covers, not too much on the outside, whereas the cow release was kind of the inverse. So we're kind of using the Dragon release and beyond as kind of a stabilizing things under the covers. Things at the interface level aren't changing all that much. It mostly will be additive, hopefully, going forward. So it makes it easier to kind of solidify cat buffers, get the generators going for each language, the DTO stuff, get JavaScript, TypeScript kind of updated. That kind of gives a paint by numbers approach for the other languages, even if they are other languages and they do things a little bit differently. The other topic we'll cover tomorrow is also kind of like the UI one, the reactive conversation. So definitely I'll hop on tomorrow if you're available.
Yeah, I will be, definitely. And that sounds great. Thank you.
Open discussion.
I guess real quick, since we have a good chunk more people on, and obviously I see I go to attendees. I see Shintat and Planet Hookie and a couple of people. So to date, how things have kind of worked out is that for like the docs meeting and the testing meeting and this client meeting, typically been heavily weighted to US EU people. And then we have an upcoming Apostle meeting, which is heavily weighted to APAC people. So we've kind of been favoring certain time zones over the other. Again, we don't just kind of show of hands or whatever. For those people that, it's getting late in Europe and it's early in APAC. So we can, going forward, as more APAC people come into this one, we can also shift these times. So, US people can maybe, wake up earlier, stay up later, and EU people can deal with it in the morning or whatever. Again, everyone seems, for the most part, to be relatively flexible. So we try to be accommodating to get as many people on. So I just, as far as discussion-wise, bring that up since we're having that topic on the Apostle group of like, that one's going to be an APAC-focused one since like 80% of the people are there right now that are interested in actively working. So just another point.
Don't mind if I jump in. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. So I think keeping to this time is good and easier to manage because if we kind of change too many times, sometimes it gets confusing and like which discussion is what time and stuff like that. So I'm happy with this time for almost every discussion. Just
Okay.
my point.
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely good input. And then the other thing, yeah, we'll start using. Actually, that was a comment I was going to make. Maybe is fun. I think you showed the calendar that was pmc.nemtech.io, right?
Yes.
Maybe we should just rename that to like calendar or something, or events.nemtech.io or something like that. And we can put all events. Obviously, right now the only events we have are basically PMC, whatever, SIG and working group meetings. But you could see other meetups or stuff happening over time that we want to just use that as like a shared calendar for the community that we can share and other people can like integrate with or something. The other thing which we haven't had to deal with and we've been able to manage it in regards to your comment, Shintat, is we haven't had the need to do weekly meetings yet for groups. We've been able to space them out like every other week or something like that. So like this week we're going to end up doing 3 of them. Next week we'll probably have 3 or 4 potentially, maybe, depending on how some things fall out. So there is a chance we might have some overlap where in a week we might have to do like 2 meetings in a day, and not everyone has to attend all meetings, of course. So we'll react to that, but given your feedback, other people from APAC speak up as well. Again, we're flexible. We definitely don't want to be changing things every week, but we also want to make sure. Obviously, if there's an agenda item, we want someone to like, hey, why don't you present this? It's like, hey, please hop on. Like we did that with Alish today. He brought it up yesterday, and I was like, hey, if you can hop on for a few minutes. He's like, yeah, I don't really want to stay up late. And we're like, well, hop on the beginning. We'll just slot your time slot at the very beginning, and then you can hop off, and then we'll move on with other topics. So that's another thing for everyone to be mindful of. If you can only hop on for a certain period of time, please let it be known if there's something you want to speak to or an agenda item, and we'll just make sure we can just reorder and slot you in at the beginning or the end or whatever it is. So everyone's usually pretty flexible so far, so it's good.
So I'm putting down this action point. Do we have any other action points from this meeting here? I was trying to take all the notes and derive action items, but just help me out if I have missed any of them.
I guess let's call it UI review checklist or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. And join mailing list. I guess just constant reminder like, hey, hop on Slack. Conversations on Slack, right? And share stuff there. We'll post. I need to get the uploads failed, so I need to finish up getting the test meeting stuff uploaded from yesterday's meeting. But we'll do the same. So hopefully tonight we'll upload these. Oh, actually, it's late there. So tomorrow we'll polish off the notes is fun, and then like we did last time, I'll get the video converted tonight and uploaded to YouTube and added to the playlist for the clients group.
I think we should also discuss when the next meeting will be. Next week or in 2 weeks?
Let's say next week for now. Let's say next Wednesday at the same time. And then we'll just cancel it if we don't need it, or we need more time. Like either we're not going to need it, either it's going to work out, we're not going to need it, or we say, hey, we really need to have a meeting, but some of the main topics, there's more discussions going on, and due to scheduling and stuff. I mean, next week should be relatively mellow. We haven't picked a day yet, but we're going to be doing an apostle group meeting and a doc meeting. So that would be 3 meetings for next week. I mean, technically, obviously, we can do 5 meetings, but it's nice to only do roughly 3 or so a week. So yeah, let's just say tentatively, it's nice to hold kind of weekly agenda and then cancel them versus saying, hey, every other third, Wednesday of the month, except in this case, right? And again, that's another thing. We'll just communicate on Slack and kind of post and say, hey, this is what's happening. We're canceling, or hey, the meeting's on. It's starting. Here's the agenda. So I think so far we've been doing a good job of that in all the groups.
Okay, so from my part, I don't have any other items for open discussion.
Oh yeah, anything from anyone else?
I don't have anything.
No, all good.
Nothing here.
All good here.
Yeah, good for me.
Great. Well, thanks for everyone that made it. I think we'd have to go through and weed out the duplicate users that hopped off and on. But roughly 15, 16 people. So it's cool. We're kind of more people are hopping on board. We're getting more topics going. So this is kind of what this is all about. So thanks everyone for taking the time, whether it's late or early. I know everyone has to carve out time, and it takes an effort. So thanks for hopping on. As usual, hop on the Slack, review the docs. If you have questions, post them in the Slack or whatever. And we will see you potentially next Wednesday.